every man and every nation comes the moment to decide. Is it my choice to do or not do, to believe or not believe? What does it mean to truly possess perseverance? To know that effort only releases its reward after a person refuses to quit. What does it mean to have definitiveness of purpose? To know one's path? What does it mean to be resolute? To have the strength of conviction? What does it mean to be relentless? To wield unbending will? Is it my choice to do or not do? To believe or not believe? These are my questions, and this is my experiment. In a story previous to this story, I was an adventurer. And in one adventure, I was traveling in a faraway place and learning the language from that place. And while learning this language, I came across a beautiful word. And before I even knew what this word meant, I collected this word. I wrote this word down. The word I collected, I later learned the meaning of. The word was Mariposa, and I came to learn that it meant butterfly. A baby butterfly, but it's not a baby butterfly, is it? A caterpillar. A caterpillar, that's a hard word to say. The wormy thing crawls into a cocoon. It kind of spits out this cocoon out of its butt or something, and it crawls into this cocoon that it made. And this is the blow your mind part. And it crawls in there and seals itself up, and it liquefies. It just melts away being a worm, and it's just this bug-colored water. Like if you were to open up the cocoon, well, don't do that because we all want more butterflies, but if you were to open it up, just this bug-colored water falls out. There's nothing in there but a bunch of bug water. It just liquefies. They just turn into liquid. They crawl in there as little worms or caterpillars, and then they just liquefy. They turn into liquid. And this phase is called the chrysalis. The chrysalis, which is another cool name. Chrysalis. 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 But no one really knows what that is. They just call it this word chrysalis, and what's really happening is some kind of weird nature magic, because we all know it turns from the caterpillar into this liquid, which maybe more of us don't know, but then we all know what it turns into. Then it becomes a butterfly. A butterfly crawls out and it flies away from this liquid. Just makes a butterfly, and then the butterfly crawls out and flies away. It's a whole new creature. It's not that this wormy thing grew wings. No, it liquefied into nothing, and it reforms into an entirely new creature. It's a whole new creature. So if anybody can explain that, but that's another topic. Mariposa. I am entering into a retreat. When I emerge, I am a better person. I imagine that I am a better version of myself coming out of this experiment, coming out of this period of time. So for this reason, I view this first phase of the experiment as like a chrysalis. So I am colloquially naming this phase of the experiment Project Mariposa, a chrysalis retreat, a building of that metaphorical cocoon to reinvent oneself. And I am inventing this character that's going from 0 to hopefully somewhere better. And I am training myself daily in this chrysalis to become that character. So that's how I imagine the space being. A space one can step into and wrap oneself in this cocoon and dissolve old, unneeded barnacles. Shed a husk to discover a new identity and to step into that identity. And to emerge anew. So I am making myself the guinea pig in this self-inflicted challenge of putting myself in a self-imposed chrysalis and calling that process Project Mariposa. So I'm going into this retreat, into this experiment with a sort of base premise. And that premise is that changing our thoughts can change our personal reality. That thought is the cause of whatever condition that we are in. That thought is the cause and condition is the effect. Meaning that it is our thoughts that ultimately create the conditions in our life. So all of the daily routines and the exercises that I will introduce throughout this process will be based on this premise. And I am going to immerse myself in materials and methods and techniques based on this framework. Training designed to break what I perceive as limiting thought patterns. Now, if this doesn't work in a month or two, or however long the retreat will be, I will come back and report that it doesn't work. And we will try a new base premise. This is an experiment. And part of the reason why I'm sharing it is because two heads are better than one. And ultimately I would love to get feedback, to get ideas, to brainstorm. Maybe I'm going about this completely the wrong way. I don't pretend to be some expert. I'm learning. And this is, like I said, I'm the guinea pig in this experiment. I'm the student in this experiment. And this is an experiment. I'm not complaining, but it's like my energy, just to describe some background and I feel like my energy has been stuck in this loop. And I strongly suspect that it is all linked to thoughts. Tony Robbins says, "What do I have to believe for this to be true? What do I have to believe for this to be true?" In this case, feeling stuck in a rut, feeling like my life's in a loop or my energy's caught in a loop. Do I have to believe for that to be true? Do I believe that? Have I mustered all my resources? I know that the condition my life is currently in is mostly because of a health crisis, one that I'm just recently coming out of. But this is why I mentioned that, not to go, oh poor me, not to say oh poor me, but because it relates to an interesting question, because a persistent lingering thought, a persistent lingering question for me is, what came first? Did the decision to entertain these negative thoughts come before this slide into ill health? I had people through that period hint that it was hypochondria I was suffering from. And what I was suffering was so real. Excruciating pain that would last hours, days, weeks, months. I could do nothing much more than just lie there for more years than I care to admit. I never told anybody how bad it really was. Nobody. Because I didn't want anybody to worry, but also because I didn't see myself that way, and I didn't want other people to see me that way, and I didn't see myself that way. So I largely just hid it from everyone. But many years went by in that state, just holding on by my fingernails. Such excruciating pain in my entire body and my entire nervous system that I just went inside myself that I just went deep inside myself and just hung on by my fingernails and just waited and waited. So why I share that, and what's interesting, the reason I share that and what's interesting is, on one level, I could be offended by somebody calling me a hypochondriac, someone who only suffers an illness in their own mind. But on another level, I sometimes wonder, were they wrong? Can I really say that my thoughts did not, even decades earlier, having negative thoughts, did not create that outcome? Could I really say it didn't stem from my own mind at some point? From just a simple entertaining some negative thoughts in one's imagination, like a placebo effect in reverse? I don't know. But I suspect there's something there enough to use as a initial base premise. That thought is the cause and condition the effect. If we think negative thoughts consistently, it leads to dis-ease, illness. So could it be that what this person implied was ultimately correct, was ultimately true? So I'm not offended. Well, I never was for some reason. And now I appreciate them saying it, because if negative thoughts can create negative circumstances, can flooding oneself with the opposite thoughts create the opposite circumstances? My greatest interest, my greatest passion has always been in human potential. What are we truly capable of? Before I even knew there was a term for it, what are we truly capable of? I like the Master Key system books of our mind being like a house, and we must build our inner fortress with the best, strongest materials. Build it only in strong, beautiful, positive thoughts. I feel like in that comparison, the chrysalis is like building that house where our original self dwells. So, what is the purpose of this chrysalis, this retreat, this experiment? What is it all about? This is why the Tony Robbins stuff is so powerful. He says, ask the right question. Learn to ask the right question. So what is the question? What is the question? What is this distilled? Its essence. Put in its simplest way. It's how to reach, it's how do we reach our potential? But But when I get there to that potential, one recognizes it when you get there in brief glimpses. How do I stay? How do I stay in that state? It's how do I remain in that state? By deciding I already am, acting as if, but I do decide, I have reached there, and I wake up in the morning and the state is gone. Plain. But I do decide I have been there, and when I'm in it, in that zone, it's the most natural state in the world. It feels effortless. And I fight my way back to that state. And when I'm in it, it feels like the easy path, the natural, effortless way to be. But then I find myself out of it and back in static and struggle once again. I don't know. Does this sound like a bunch of blah blah words? Or deluding oneself? Like delusion? Like telling yourself? Because I ain't into deluding myself. If it's just gonna be about telling myself lies, if it feels even a tiny bit like that, I'm out. Like pulling the plug and, like I said, trying a new base premise. Cause I sure ain't into a bunch of fluffy words making myself feel better. That's not what this is about. I want the truth. I want the core, the essence, the raw, practical techniques. I want the method. I want the techniques. I want the method, and I want to learn that method. Maybe even master that method. And that's what this experiment is about. Trying these methods, testing these different techniques, these different methods, these different exercises, these different daily rituals, and seeing what works. Bunch of blah, blah, blah. Gonna figure this out, guys. Gonna figure this out. Is it about just declaring it once and for all? Just declaring it? Like a ceremony? Planting one's flag? Is it possible to just pull all the threads together and make some once and for all line in the sand? Like being knighted? Stepping into that new role? Some coming of age ceremony? Some declaration to something that matters? Some vow, some declaration for absolute, all-out commitment. These quotes come to mind. You are done trying, start being. Effort only releases its reward when a person refuses to quit. That's what this experiment is for, guys. That's what these next months are for me. Asking these questions, experimenting with these concepts, going deep. Going deep. It goes deep, guys. I mean fun deep. It goes fun deep, not like dark water deep. It's like, do you ever feel like there's a part of you? Is this just me? I feel like there's a part of me that has never been outside of a cage. Does that make sense? A part of me that has never fully emerged. Break free, break free, break free or die trying. Break free or die trying. Not for you. Not for you guys. That was internal dialogue. This is my experiment. That was for me. It was a consciousness rant. I'm doing the experiment. Those words are for me. God. Can you imagine if people I grew up with heard me talking like this? About butterflies and birds in cages? Good grief. This is the reason why I didn't share for ages. Because I was getting my thoughts around all of this, but also I don't know how to English this stuff without sounding half ridiculous. Roll the dice, man. What's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? Somebody asked me once, because I lived an adventurous life for half my adult life. Someone asked me once, how do you gamble so much with your life? And I said, I've never gambled. I don't gamble. I don't like gambling. But then I realized what they meant by asking that question. They thought I was taking risks. They thought I was doing big gambles because of what appeared from the outside as big risks. But what they didn't know is that I had already decided. I knew already that I was going to complete what I set forth to do. And to them, it appeared like a gamble. So what's the worst that could happen? I die. Or my mind breaks. Well, you're in jeopardy of that on the path you're currently on. So what is the worst that could happen? What is worth living for? What is worth dying for? Words, words, words. Blah, blah, blah. Words mean nothing without something behind them. And you've broke pledges to yourself in the past. So what's the point in doing it again? I'll never miss a sunset, and then I miss a sunset. I'll never go back again, and then I go back again. What does it mean to have absolute, all-out commitment? So maybe this experiment is as much an exercise in making that commitment as it is in actually doing the exercises involved, it is fun to consider how much lies on a single choice, a single decision. When you truly make that decision, how much the world can change with just a slight shift of perspective. One, once and for all. One, never again. And then it doesn't matter how hard the so-called exercises are. Because maybe you've already decided.
Go back again. Go back.